So what is a trailer breakaway system? Well, it says it right there in the title. This is for if your trailer breaks away or becomes completely unattached from the tow vehicle. This is the safety system. This is an emergency brake, if you will. This will become activated once the trailer is completely separated or broke away from the tow vehicle. It will activate the 12-volt battery in here, supply some power to the brakes on the trailer, and help it come to a stop and hopefully not go into oncoming traffic and continue down the highway. So that's all it's for. It's for the breakaway worst case scenario. Happy 4th of July. By the time you see this video, 4th of July has came and gone. I hope you made it out with all your fingers and toes after shooting off all your fireworks. What we're going to talk about today is the trailer breakaway system. We're going to talk about fire extinguishers. If you had a good 4th of July, they say it's not a party until you have to get the water hose or the fire extinguisher out. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about what consists of the breakaway battery system, why it's used, why we have to have it, maybe some of the laws surrounding it, and we're going to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. So let's talk about the different components that makes up the breakaway battery system. As you see here that we have laid out on this freshly installed trailer deck, you also see a fire extinguisher. Here's what these two have in common. We have several fire extinguishers around the shop. They're very important. I believe in 12 years have used a fire extinguisher one time to my knowledge. A fire extinguisher is one of those things that you need to have around and hope you never use it. That is the similarity with the trailer breakaway system. This is something that needs to be in good working condition. If you have brakes on your trailer, they make these for electric brakes, and if you have hydraulic brakes, they make a different system that we're not going to cover in today's video. We'll cover that down the road. But this system here, it needs to be in working condition, and you hope that you never ever have to use it, just like the fire extinguisher. But if it is needed, just like the fire extinguisher, is going to come in handy if you get to that scenario. So this is the complete box. This is what houses the battery. This is a 12-volt 5 amp hour battery. Inside that also, that I'm not going to show, is a charge controller. It has a circuit board that you can turn it off and on. It shows on not all of them, but some of them, if you push the test button, it will tell you if your battery is charged, needs to be replaced, or if it is charging off of your tow vehicle. These batteries, sometimes we see them last a year, sometimes we see them last every couple of years. If you live in a state where you're required to have a trailer inspection, this is something that will be tested. If you haul and you have to meet DOT requirements, if you get pulled over and they do an inspection, usually no matter what level inspection they do, they're always going to test the breakaway battery. If it does not work, so if it's not charged at 12 volts, they will issue a citation depending on what state you're in. Sometimes that can be pretty costly. With that, you have the breakaway switch. This is a switch, has two wires coming out of it with a mounting flange, and with the switch you have the pin that goes in along with the lanyard that hooks up to the tow vehicle. At the end of the video, we'll show the proper way to install the lanyard to your tow vehicle, and we'll show the way not to install the lanyard to your tow vehicle. So let's talk about how all this operates, and I'll talk about some of the questions that we get. Sometimes we don't have a good understanding, just lack of information. Maybe you bought your trailer, they didn't explain it to you what this is for. We try to explain it here. And then I'll show you one thing. This is installed incorrectly a lot of the time, and it's an easy mistake to make, even for somebody that is very versed in electrical. It is installed incorrectly, and if this switch becomes installed incorrectly and it becomes activated, you will need this. So you're gonna have to carry this with you because you likely are going to have some smoke and some fire. So we're gonna talk about this first, so we make sure this is not installed incorrectly. So if this comes on your trailer, if you have brakes and you live in a state, you're required, and as far as I know, all states are required to have this on your trailer. If you have brakes on it, it should be installed correctly. What happens though, sometimes this will get hit, it will get broke, the lanyard will become, road rashed, cut in half, and the switch has to be replaced, and the wiring is installed incorrectly. And I'll show you what happens. So on this system, you have two wires, and it is a 12-volt system. And here's the most common mistake. In a 12-volt system, you have to have a positive and a ground for 12 volt to work correctly. That is true. 12 volt will not work if you don't have a ground. And the mistake that is made, power will be hooked up to one side, and just out of muscle memory, just out of the knowledge of having to have a 12 volt, the other side will be grounded. Here is the problem. Once this is grounded to the trailer chassis, we're just gonna stick that in there, and this is hooked up to the hot, if this pin becomes activated, that is a direct 12 volt, 5 amp hour short directly to the frame of the trailer, which can cause this to catch on fire and can cause this battery to catch on fire. This connection is not made to have a ground. This is a light switch, if you will, and I'm going to show you a demonstration of how that works. Both of these have power to them. One is a open circuit when the pin is installed. If the pin becomes pulled out, it becomes a closed circuit. It takes power from the breakaway system and sends power to the brakes on the trailer. So make sure if you install one of these that you do not ground either one of these. They need to be hooked up correctly. One is for battery supply from the battery. The other hooks straight into your brake wire that feeds the brakes. With that being said, it is often misunderstood that this has something to do with your everyday function of your brakes. I will tell you, this has nothing to do with your braking system other than for emergency purposes. So if the battery is dead in this, if something's not properly working, it's not going to affect your brakes. That all that has to do with is the truck brake control system is what controls that. This has no function to that whatsoever. The only time this would come into play if it were to short out in the switch, or if you pull the pin out, then it's going to send power from this battery, if the battery is hot, to the brakes. So you have to make sure that it is functioning correctly. If you leave your trailer out in the pasture, I will tell you, a lot of the plastic products we have, a lot of the wiring, some of the liquids they use in the manufacturing process have soy, they have other chemicals on them that attract cattle and squirrels and other animals. Cattle will, for whatever reason, will get around this and they will chew on this, or goats, and they will pull it out. And here's the problem. If that trailer is just sitting out in the pasture, it's gonna run this battery. Say if the battery is fully charged, it's gonna run that 12 volt battery to your brakes, gonna energize the magnets, and those dudes are just gonna sit there heating on the drums for as long as that battery has juice. If it gets too hot, say you've got grass built up around it from being out in the pasture, because that's where you park it, you don't tow it every day, it can cause a fire. It can also burn your magnets up. So if you were to go and hook onto this and you notice this has been pulled out, you're going to need to check out the brake system on the trailer before towing the vehicle. This battery is going to be dead, likely will need to be replaced, or at the minimum recharged in that. That's something we see a lot of. A lot of times we will see that the battery is dead, the switch is malfunctioned, the pin has been out, they'll put the battery in, then it locks the brakes up, and they can't figure out why the brakes are locked up. Everything has to be in good working order. Something else, this pin, along with the switch, just being out in if you're in the Texas heat like we are, they will become brittle, they'll break off, or you will drag your cable because maybe it wasn't hooked up, you had too much slack in it on your tow vehicle. Sometimes it's hard just to go in to find this pin. So don't expect, if you go into a trailer parts store or if you order one online, be careful about just buying any pin, because the pin is specific, and whether this is this brand, whether it's a Takancha, even some of those brands have different lengths of pins and they will not interchange. I do not sell any pins, and I do not sell any lanyards by themselves. We will make a lanyard if we need to, but a lot of times if the lanyard needs to be replaced, it's just as cheap to buy the complete switch. That being said, you're going to have to wire the switch in and make sure you wire it properly. So now that we see the components of it, I'm gonna give you a scenario with it hooked up, and if worst case scenario were to happen and you had to engage it, how it should work, what's gonna happen during that, so you know what to expect. So let me get my stuff together and we'll cover that. And just remember, when you click to subscribe, leave us a thumbs up or leave us a comment, be sure to check out the description below. We will leave some links to some breakaway systems. If I can't find this one, I'll put some comparable on there. The majority of them are pretty good out there. I'll try to leave some links to some of the lanyards that I'm gonna show you later on in the video, some of the clips, just some stuff to be helpful if you can't find it in your area and you have to purchase it online. So here we have the same system. What I want you to get into your head, this is not a tail light. This is your brakes on your trailer. This will be your brake assembly, your brake magnet. So let's pretend that is that. So I'm gonna set that to the side. Here we have the breakaway box, and here we have the breakaway switch. If you go into a part supply, that's what you can call them. If you need the whole thing, call it a system. You can buy the boxes separately. You can buy the battery separately along with the switches. Some of the old school trailers will have just a battery that hooks up to a switch. It will not have a charge controller. You can hook that up to the 12-volt charge system off your tow vehicle that we'll cover here in a little bit. But note this, if it doesn't have the charge controller, if you leave it hooked up to your trailer all the time, or if you're driving long distances, it can overcharge that battery. It can also backfeed into the truck without the charge controller in there. So I recommend, if you have the old system, put a more modern breakaway system on that does have that charge controller in it. You would have to have a charge system that's operating correctly off your truck to charge this. Some manufacturers will hook the charge wire into the tail lights, so when you're running at night, it will charge it. We see it both ways. Both ways work, but I prefer to have it off the 12-volt system on the truck just to keep the battery maintained. So what we have here on the breakaway box, you're usually gonna have a 3-wire system. Many times they will be labeled, I don't know if you can see that on the screen, that's labeled battery. This is labeled ground, and the blue is labeled brake, if you can see that. I don't know if the camera can pick that up or not. We do see this mistake sometimes as far as the battery. This is battery in, not battery out. So this is for the 12-volt charge system off your truck. You connect into that, or the running lights if that's how they have it hooked up, and this will maintain the small battery that's in here. You have to have the ground hooked up. This ground needs to be grounded to a good chassis ground. We will normally, if we're doing an install, we will not just tie this into the ground wire of the trailer. We will confirm that the trailer has a hard chassis ground, and then we will also make a hard chassis ground on this unit itself. Your third wire that comes out of the box is the blue wire here, and it hooks to your switch. This one is color coded, some are not. Some of these wires will both be black, and they are not polarity sensitive. You can hook either or. They do it in this scenario just to help you out. It's blue to blue. And the way that works, you have 12 volts of power here. It is outputting 12 volts of power down this blue wire into this switch. And you have a pin that is causing this circuit to be open, so there's no power flowing through it. On your black wire here, this black wire connects to the brake system, and that will be connected up at the front. You don't have to run it all the way to the back. You can hook that into your junction box. You can hook it in with a butt connector, however you want, at this location, if you can access that brake wire, and you hook that to the hot side of your brake wire, and it runs all the way back. And the way that works, if I can clean some of this up a little bit. So we have our battery grounded, which I'm using the ground here on the light, so we have a ground so it'll actuate. So you have the 12-volt power coming out to the switch, and then we have a dead wire. This wire is doing nothing right now. It's just waiting to be used in a worst-case scenario. That dead wire is connected to, remember, this is not a tail light. This is our brake system. This is our brake magnet on our trailer. So if you're in an accident and the trailer becomes completely unattached from the tow vehicle, not riding on the chains, you hope if you have your chains connected correctly, and you can see our safety chain video on that, and I'll try to mention that again at the end of the video as well. If you cradle the coupler with the chains, this likely will not activate, and you can just control your trailer and get it off the road. Worst case scenario, if it becomes completely unattached, if you're in an accident, or if you've hooked up to the wrong ball, whatever, this will pull the lanyard, activate the brakes to slow the trailer down, and hopefully to not go into oncoming traffic or to continue down the road, especially if you have a load or something like that on it. So we're gonna activate this system. So this is worst case scenario. So if you'll watch the tail light, when this is pulled, if I can get it pulled, so it immediately sends the full force of this battery to the brakes on the trailer. So now the brakes are slowing it down. Not made to lock it up, it is made to slow it down. If there's any DOT officers listening to this video, leave me a comment. Probably gonna get some bad comments on this one. If any of y'all been pulled over by the DOT, do not leave a nasty comment. We try not to have any nasty comments. We try to open this up for good discussion and education, whether I'm being educated or maybe you're receiving some education. I have had some DOT officers state, if this is pulled, it should lock the trailer up. That is not the case. That is not the way this is designed. So maybe the education you've received on that is inaccurate. I would encourage you to go back and study that. It's made to slow the trailer down. Same purpose as we have anti-lock brakes on some trailers today and vehicles. If you get in a full lockup situation, what happens? You skid. You become uncontrollable in that scenario, and it could cause the accident to be worse. So this system is made to slow the unit down, not to lock it up, just like electric trailer brakes. I know sometimes we'll have an officer pull this cable, and if you can move the tow vehicle, they will write a citation. You can beat that citation when you take the proper documentation. We keep that proper documentation to give, especially to our pro drivers, but even to just the general public as well, so that we're all on the same page and we all have a better understanding. I had the opportunity to talk to a Texas State DOT liaison here a while back. We covered that. She did not have the knowledge on that. I provided her documentation, so hopefully they'll do some better training on that, so that we're all in compliance. We're not breaking the law, but we're all safe. That's more important to me, is being safe, and everybody's safe, and everybody has the working knowledge. That's really the whole point of our videos. We provide knowledge, and I'm gonna tell you, a lot of times when we're getting ready to set up a video, I learn stuff. I'm like, I didn't realize that, or somebody will leave a comment, and I'll say, I didn't realize that. I've been doing this a long time, but I did not know that. And that's what this is all about. It's not to beat each other up. It's not to call out the DOT, because I'm not. I have several customers that are DOT, that we do service on their trailers. They take good care of their trailers, but just a better understanding of the Breakaway system, because for whatever reason, it's just many times overlooked and misunderstood. So hopefully we can clear that up. So again, if that's pulled, it is going to send power. So you can imagine, if you're pulling this out to hook it up to your trailer, as I'm gonna show later in the video, it's discharging this battery right now. You're using up the battery. Remember, this is like a fire extinguisher. You don't need this bad boy until you have a fire. You don't need this until your trailer has become unattached from the tow unit, and you're trying to keep from having a greater accident and either damaging more personal property or, God forbid, hurting someone else. So make sure this system is correct. Make sure you're in compliance. Be sure to stick around to the end of our video when we show how to hook this up. Again, the two most common mistakes I see is people think that this is the brake control system for the trailer. It is not. This is hooked up incorrectly, and then later the lanyard is installed incorrectly. Hope that helps with any questions you may have. Maybe you've been pulled over, maybe you didn't have a good understanding of it. Hopefully that helps with that, so we can all be on the same page, because I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of traffic out here. A lot of the trailers we see that come in here, whether they be pro or an individual, sometimes those things are a little sketchy. Sometimes they need a little love and a little maintenance. Remember, just because you think it will make it there, you're out on the busy highways, and you're not only putting yourself at potential danger, but you're also putting the other motoring public in potential danger. So make sure your gear, your rig is up to par. Make sure you're safe. Make sure you're compliant. And let's just all be safe out there on the roadway. So let's run out to the parking lot. I'm gonna show you how to hook this up, and we'll wrap this video up. Now that we understand the purpose of the Breakaway system, we're gonna show how to hook it up and how not to hook it up. I see some people hook it up a certain way. I'm gonna show you that. Two reasons you don't wanna hook it up that way is it could cause this system not to work. And if you're pulled over by DOT, it could cause you to get a citation. You have the loop in it, and you gotta get it attached to here. I see a lot of people, especially some of our transport drivers, they'll pull that out. They'll run this through, do that, and plug it back in. Will that work? Yes, that will work. You don't want to pull this out any more than you have to. You should never have to pull it out. So I do not recommend that for any situation unless you absolutely don't have a clip to hook it up with. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this back out. The other way I see it hooked up is once the safety chain is installed, they will hook it around the safety chain. That does not work either. You still can, in most states, you can get a citation for hooking it up this way. It is supposed to be secured to the safety chain loop independently. That's where you use a clip. That will make the system work. That will make it independent and keep you from getting a citation as well. Another way that we see it hooked up is people will fish it through the safety chain. And they'll do it like that. That will get you a citation in most places. The other thing will cause this safety chain will go to rocking. If the safety chain were to come unhooked, it will pull the pin out and cause the brakes to lock up while you're moving down the highway. So do not fish it through the safety chain. Really, the only way to hook it up is with an independent clip. Now, one thing you'll notice with this independent clip, it is long. It's going to drag the ground. You have a lot of extra here. So what do you do with the extra? Some people will zip tie it up. Some will zip tie it to the chain. I really don't recommend that. You have a couple of options. You can actually you can actually buy a coiled lanyard that has some spring to it that keeps it from dragging the ground. Those are fine to use. The other method you can use is just take some slack of it by rolling it within itself. That will keep it off the ground. If you get into a situation where the trailer becomes unattached from the tow vehicle, it will stretch itself out after the safety chains fail, engage the breakaway, and cause the trailer breakaway system to work as it is designed. So whether you're using the factory lanyard or if you get one of the nicer coiled lanyards, and I'll try to leave a link to some of those in the description below, just hook up the lanyard independently. Do not fish it through the chain. Do not hook it into the S-hook or safety hook, whatever you've got. Do not wrap it around. And if you get this too slack, if the ball were to come off and this is shorter than the chain, your chain is really to hold the trailer in place, like you can see our safety chain video, how to properly hook those up. You don't want this to engage. You want yourself the opportunity for the trailer to cradle, to hang up. This really only is used, like we stated in the video, if you have a complete failure. This is a worst case scenario. The trailer becomes completely separated from the tow vehicle. This engages and just slows the trailer down and hopefully keeps it into coming into oncoming traffic or just going down the road freely. So as we stated in the video, this is very important. It's often overlooked. Hook it up correctly to make sure you're safe. Hook it up correctly so you don't get a ticket. And we will see you in the next video.